I'm sitting in Paris, where I live part of each year. As someone with a passion for food and cooking, one of the best parts of my life here is surely the great food.
I revel in foods such as the 350 varieties of French cheese, which are so lovingly tended until perfectly ripe and unctuous. I also love the pastries, which glow like precious gems. At last count, I had visited over 60 pastry shops here in Paris. It's a wonder that I don't look like Humpty Dumpty by now.
But I take delight in more than French food while here. In Paris, I can eat more foods than at home in Seattle, and I can eat more quantities of some foods that at home must be doled out in meager portions. You see, I developed many food sensitivities many moons ago when I fell ill after being exposed to toxic chemicals in a new office building. So to have my drastic food reactions diminished when I'm in Paris feels divinely liberating. So why is it that I can eat more foods in Paris? Well, let's take French bread as an example.
Since living here, I've been curious why I don't hear Parisians talking about gluten intolerance or having to avoid bread as I often hear at home. There may be some French who can't eat foods with gluten, but I haven't heard of any yet, whereas at home I hear people talk about this regularly. When I mentioned this odd difference between Paris and Seattle to several food experts, they told me that American breads have among the highest gluten content in the world. Apparently, traditional French breads are made with a low gluten flour, which not only requires more skill to work with, but the dough needs more time to rise, about 12 to 24 hours. American bakers have tended to favor adding gluten to flour because breads rise more quickly this way, so they can bake more loaves in a shorter period of time. Another reason I've been told that French bread may be more digestible for me is that most wheat in France is not grown with hybrid seeds, whereas in the United States, most wheat is grown with hybrid seeds. The French have been more cautious about using hybrid seeds, and apparently this less natural form of seed may be harder for some people to digest. Lastly, but not the least of my findings, is that bread here in France tends to contain fewer chemicals. The first year that I lived in Paris, I was shocked by how much of my food here spoils about 3 times faster than food at home. As a result, in Paris, I end up having to shop for food about 4 times a week, whereas at home I only need to go to the grocery store once a week. I've talked to other Americans who've just moved here, and they also have had the same experience.
I do have a tip for people who are sensitive to gluten yet wish to try French breads when they're in France. Your best bet may be eating a croissant here because they tend to contain the least amount of gluten since butter supplies so much of its ingredients. But I've been told this wouldn't be true for American croissants because in the US, croissants are made with a higher gluten flour. So how great is this? In my experience, it's not often when the richer, more buttery kind of a food is your safest health bet. Would you like to learn how to make a scrumptious gluten and dairy-free dessert, which even my friends who don't have food sensitivities love? I'll show you how in my video, Having My Cake and Eating It Too.